The darkness of space stretched endlessly in all directions, dotted with distant stars that had witnessed countless civilizations rise and fall. Among those stars, the Korthian Dominion had carved out an empire spanning 12 star systems, each one claimed through military might and absolute force. Their warships were massive constructs of metal and power, designed to intimidate and destroy. For 300 cycles, no species had successfully resisted their conquest. Commander Vectar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crimson Talon, watching the blue-green planet grow larger on his view screen. His scaled skin reflected the soft glow of the display panels, and his four eyes studied the world with practiced assessment. This planet, designated as Target 773 in Korthian records, showed all the signs of a primitive civilization. Radio signals, primitive satellites, chemical propulsion systems. The inhabitants had barely left their own atmosphere. The conquest would be simple. It always was. "Begin standard protocol," Vectar ordered, his voice carrying the weight of hundreds of successful campaigns. "Broadcast the ultimatum in all detected languages. Give them one rotation to respond." The communication officer, a young Korthian named Drawl, worked his console with efficient movements. The message transmitted across all frequencies, a declaration that had brought dozens of worlds to their knees. Surrender and serve the Dominion, or face complete annihilation. There were no other options. There never had been. Vectar expected silence or perhaps panicked transmissions between the primitive governments below. What he received instead made him pause. A calm, clear voice responded in perfect Korthian. "This is Admiral Kate Morrison of the United Earth Defense Command. Your presence in our system is unwelcome. We request that you leave peacefully and immediately. If you choose to remain, we will consider it an act of war." The bridge fell silent. Draw looked up from his console, confusion evident on his features. "Commander, they speak our language."
"How is that possible?"
Vectar felt a flicker of uncertainty, quickly suppressed. "They must have intercepted our previous scouting probes. Clever, but ultimately meaningless. Their technology is centuries behind ours." He leaned forward in his command chair, activating the communication system himself. "I am Commander Vectar of the Korthian Dominion. You will surrender your world within one rotation, or we will take it by force. This is your only warning." The response came without hesitation. "Then I'm afraid we're at war, Commander. I hope you're prepared for what comes next." The communication ended. Vectar stared at the view screen, trying to process the absolute confidence in the human's voice. No pleading, no fear, no negotiation, just a simple statement of fact. "Advance the fleet," he ordered. "Target their orbital installations. We'll show them what happens to those who defy the Dominion." The Korthian fleet moved forward, 20 warships strong, each one capable of reducing a city to ash. They passed the planet's moon, noting the small research stations there. Easy targets. The fleet maintained formation, weapons charging, ready to deliver overwhelming force. Admiral Kate Morrison stood in the command center of Earth's primary defense station, watching the enemy fleet approach. Around her, dozens of officers worked at their stations, their faces calm and focused. Years of preparation had led to this moment. Decades of wondering if humanity was alone in the universe, and if they weren't, whether first contact would be peaceful or hostile. Now they had their answer. "All ships report ready," Lieutenant Jake Collins announced from the tactical station. His fingers moved across holographic displays, coordinating the positions of every human vessel in the system. "Awaiting your command, Admiral." Kate studied the enemy fleet's formation. They moved with absolute confidence, treating this like a routine operation. They had no idea what they were about to face. "Humanity has dreamed of meeting other intelligent life for centuries," Kate said quietly, her words carrying across the command center. "We hoped for friends. We prepared for enemies. Today we show the galaxy what humans are capable of when threatened. All ships, execute Pattern Alpha. Show them what we've been hiding." Space itself seemed to shimmer as human warships dropped their stealth fields. They appeared around the Korthian fleet like ghosts materializing from nothing, emerging from positions that should have been empty. 30 vessels, each one smaller than the Korthian ships but moving with predatory grace. On the Crimson Talon's bridge, alarm systems screamed to life. Drawl's voice cracked with panic. "Commander, we have multiple contacts. They were hiding somehow, we never detected them." Vectar gripped his command chair, mind racing. No species they'd encountered had stealth technology this advanced. The tactical display showed human ships surrounding his fleet, cutting off retreat vectors. This wasn't how battles started. This wasn't how primitive species behaved. All ships defensive formation. Return fire! The battle erupted across the void. Corthian plasma cannons fired brilliant streams of superheated energy, weapons that had destroyed countless enemies. But the human ships moved like nothing Vectar had ever seen. They twisted and turned with impossible speed, their smaller size and advanced engines letting them dodge fire that should have vaporized them. Captain Melissa Grant sat in the cockpit of her fighter, leading Squadron 7 through the chaos of battle. Her hands moved across the controls with practiced ease, her body pressed back into the seat as she pulled maneuvers that pushed the limits of human endurance. G-forces that would have killed most species merely made her grunt with effort. "Stay tight, people," she called to her squadron over the communication channel. "These big bastards are slow. Use that against them. Hit and run, just like we trained." Her fighter screamed past a Corthian cruiser, its automated defense systems tracking her movement but unable to keep up with her speed. She fired a burst from her railgun, the magnetic accelerator launching metal slugs at a fraction of light speed. The projectiles tore through the cruiser's shield emitters, creating a gap in its defenses. "Opening created on Target 7, Melissa reported. "Bombers, you're clear for your run." 3 larger human craft swooped in, exploiting the weakness her squadron had created. They launched missiles that streaked toward the vulnerable section of the Corthian ship, impacting with devastating force. The cruiser's shields flickered and died, leaving its hull exposed. Vectar watched in growing horror as his fleet began to fall apart. The humans fought with a coordination that seemed impossible for such a young species. They anticipated his commands, exploited weaknesses before he even knew they existed, and showed absolutely no fear of death. One of his destroyers exploded, its reactor core breached by sustained human fire. Another limped away, engines failing, life support compromised. In less than an hour of combat, Vectar had lost 5 ships. 5 ships to a species that shouldn't have even understood the basics of space warfare. "Fall back," he ordered, pride burning like acid in his throat. "Emergency jump scatter pattern." The surviving Corthian ships activated their faster-than-light drives, disappearing into hyperspace in random directions. It was a retreat, pure and simple, something Vectar had never experienced in his entire military career. As the last enemy vessel vanished, Admiral Morrison allowed herself a small smile. Around the command center, cheers erupted from her crew. They'd done it. Humanity's first space battle against an alien species, and they'd won. But Kate knew this was just the beginning. The Corthians would return with more ships, more firepower, more determination. This first victory had bought Earth time, nothing more. "Get me damage reports from all vessels," she ordered, her voice cutting through the celebration. "And send a priority message to the World Council. Tell them the war has started, and we need every ship, every weapon, every soldier ready for what comes next." Lieutenant Collins looked up from his station, his face serious despite the victory. "Admiral, we intercepted some of their communications before they jumped. They're calling this defeat impossible. They're going to come back harder." Kate nodded slowly, watching the empty space where the enemy fleet had been. "Good, let them come. Let them bring their full strength. Because what they don't understand yet is that humans don't just know how to fight. We were born for it. Every war we've ever fought, every conflict in our history, has been preparing us for this moment." She turned to face her crew, seeing the determination in their eyes. They came here expecting an easy conquest. Instead, they found something they've never encountered before. They found humanity. And before this war is over, the entire galaxy is going to learn what that means. The red planet hung in space like a rust-colored jewel, its surface dotted with the lights of human settlements. Mars had been humanity's first real step into the solar system, a proving ground for technologies that would eventually take them to the stars. Mining operations pulled precious metals from the ground. Research stations studied everything from atmospheric conversion to long-term habitation. 50,000 people called Mars home, building a new world with their own hands. Commander Vectar had fled back to Corthian space with his surviving ships, his report causing shockwaves through the Dominion's military hierarchy. A primitive species had defeated a Corthian fleet. It seemed impossible, yet the evidence was undeniable. Ships destroyed. Warriors killed. Pride shattered. The Korthian High Command responded with overwhelming force. They dispatched War Master Theln, a commander whose reputation was built on the ashes of conquered worlds. His fleet consisted of 200 warships, enough firepower to reduce entire planets to lifeless rocks. The Dominion would not be embarrassed twice. Theln was not like Vectar, where the younger commander had rushed forward with confidence. Theln moved with careful deliberation. He studied every piece of intelligence about the humans, watching recordings of the first battle over and over, analyzing their tactics and capabilities. They use stealth technology beyond our sensors, he noted to his senior officers during a strategy meeting. They move faster than our targeting systems can track. Their weapons are primitive in design but effective in application. Most concerning, they show no fear of death. His tactical officer, a scarred veteran named Kren, gestured at the holographic display showing the human solar system. War Master, we could bypass their outer defenses entirely, jump directly to their homeworld and force immediate surrender. Theln's head moved in a negative gesture. No, they've proven they can fight. Cornering them at their homeworld might trigger desperate measures. We'll proceed systematically. First, we take their outer colonies, Mars, the asteroid mining operations, break their industrial capacity, then move on the homeworld when they're weakened. The Korthian fleet emerged from hyperspace near Mars, their ships forming a massive wall of firepower. Theln broadcast a simple message to the human colonies. Evacuate now. You have 6 hours. After that, we will destroy every structure on this planet. The response came from Colonel Danny Price, commander of the Mars Defense Force. Negative. These colonies are our homes. If you want them, you'll have to take them from us. Theln had expected as much. Humans, he was learning, did not surrender easily. So be it. Begin the bombardment. Before his weapons could fire, alarms blared across every Korthian ship. The tactical displays lit up with contact markers, dozens of them appearing seemingly from nowhere. Human warships had been hiding in Mars orbit, their stealth systems concealing them until the perfect moment. Lieutenant Commander Jake Collins stood on the bridge of the UEDC Valiant, a destroyer-class vessel that had been waiting silently for 3 days. His crew had endured the boredom of stealth operations, maintaining absolute radio silence, trusting that the enemy would come. Admiral Morrison's strategy had been correct. The Korthians were predictable in their methodical approach. All weapons target the lead dreadnought, Jake ordered, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. Fire on my mark. 3, 2, 1 mark. The Valiant shuddered as its railguns fired, magnetic coils accelerating tungsten rounds to incredible velocities. The projectiles slammed into the Korthian dreadnought's shields, designed to stop energy weapons but less effective against solid matter, traveling at relativistic speeds. The shields flickered under the sustained barrage. Across Mars orbit, 30 human warships opened fire simultaneously. The Korthians had numbers on their side, but the humans had position, preparation, and the element of surprise. It was a dance humanity had perfected through countless wars on their homeworld. Strike hard, strike fast, and never give the enemy time to recover. Theln gripped his command chair as his flagship took hits. All ships, return fire. Fighter wings launch immediately. The battle became a storm of energy and metal. Korthian plasma cannons painted space with brilliant streams of fire. Human railguns answered with invisible death. Missiles crossed paths with torpedoes. Fighter craft from both sides engaged in deadly dogfights between the larger vessels. Captain Melissa Grant led her squadron through the chaos once again, her fighter weaving between debris and weapons fire. She'd survived the first battle, become something of a hero in Earth's media, but she felt no different, just another pilot doing her job trying to keep her people alive. Squadron 7, form up on me, she called. We're going after their carrier. Those fighters have to come from somewhere. Her squadron fell into formation, 12 fighters moving as one. They accelerated toward a massive Korthian vessel, its hangar bays spitting out enemy craft in a continuous stream. Point defense systems tracked their approach, filling space with defensive fire. Break and scatter random patterns, Melissa ordered. Don't give their computers a predictable target. The human fighters split apart, each pilot using their own judgment and reflexes. It was chaos, but controlled chaos. The Korthians fought with rigid discipline and coordinated firing patterns. Humans fought like a pack of wolves, each individual making split-second decisions while trusting their teammates to adapt. 2 fighters from Squadron 7 took hits. their pilots ejecting in emergency pods before their craft exploded. Melissa felt the loss like a physical blow, but she couldn't stop, couldn't slow down. 10 remaining fighters converged on the Corthian carrier, launching their full payload of missiles at point-blank range. The carrier's shields couldn't stop everything. Missiles penetrated the defensive barrier, impacting against the hull and punching deep into the vessel's interior. Secondary explosions bloomed along its length as ammunition stores and fuel tanks ignited. The carrier began to list, venting atmosphere and debris. On the ground, the Mars colonists watched the battle through telescopes and observation stations. Colonel Danny Price coordinated the surface defenses, knowing that if the fleet failed, his people would be next. But watching the human ships fight, seeing them take on an enemy with 10 times their numbers, he felt something he hadn't expected: hope. Evacuate the civilians to the underground shelters, he ordered his officers, but keep all defensive batteries online. If any of those alien ships get through our fleet, we'll show them that Mars knows how to fight too. The battle raged for 6 hours. Theln watched in growing frustration as his numerical advantage meant less and less. The humans used the orbital space around Mars like it was their own territory, utilizing gravity assists and the planet's mass as tactical advantages. They targeted his command ships, disrupted his formations, and refused to engage in the straightforward battle he'd planned. Worse, their endurance seemed limitless. Corthian crews began showing signs of fatigue after 4 hours of continuous combat. Human crews seemed to grow more focused, more determined. It was as if the stress of battle sharpened them rather than dulling their capabilities. "War Master, we've lost 47 ships," Kren reported, his voice tight with stress. "The humans have lost 18. At this rate, we'll take unacceptable casualties before achieving our objective." Theln made a decision he'd never thought he'd have to make. All ships withdraw to the outer system. Maintain defensive formation. As the Corthian fleet retreated, Jake Collins allowed himself a moment of exhaustion. His hands were shaking, he realized. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind the reality of what they'd just survived. "Status report," he said, forcing his voice to remain steady. "Hull integrity at 70%, his engineering officer reported. "We took hits to sections 4 and 7. Railgun battery 3 is offline. Casualties are light, mostly minor injuries." Jake nodded slowly. The Valiant had survived. His crew had survived. And they'd sent a second Corthian fleet running. But he knew, just as Admiral Morrison knew, that this wasn't over. "Send a message to Earth Command," Jake ordered. "Victory at Mars. Enemy fleet retreated but still operational. We need reinforcements and repairs. And tell them the Corthians are learning. They'll adapt their tactics. Next time will be harder." Captain Melissa Grant landed her fighter on the carrier UEDC Horizon, her hands still gripping the controls even after the engines shut down. She'd lost 2 pilots from her squadron. 2 friends who'd trained with her, fought with her, trusted her to lead them. The deck crew helped her out of the cockpit, but she barely noticed them. She walked to the ready room in a daze, removing her helmet and sitting down heavily. Other pilots were there, some celebrating, others silent like her. "We won," someone said. "We actually won against those odds." Melissa looked up, meeting the eyes of Lieutenant Sophie Brennan, one of the newer pilots. "We survived," Melissa corrected. "That's not the same as winning. They'll be back. And next time, they'll know what to expect." But despite her words, despite the losses, Melissa felt something growing inside her, a fierce pride in what humanity had accomplished. They'd faced an empire that had conquered dozens of worlds, and they'd made that empire bleed. War Master Theln sat in his command chamber reviewing the battle. 3 months had passed since the Battle of Mars orbit. War Master Theln had established a defensive perimeter in the outer reaches of the human solar system, his fleet holding position while Corthian science vessels studied their unexpected enemy. The High Command had been clear in their orders. No more defeats, no more embarrassment. Understand the humans, then crush them. Theln spent his days reviewing reports that made less sense the more he read them. The humans had only been spacefaring for barely a century. Their fastest ships were slower than standard Corthian cruisers. Their weapons technology was based on primitive kinetic principles rather than advanced energy manipulation. By every logical measure, they should have been easy to conquer. Yet here he sat, having lost nearly 70 ships across 2 engagements. "War Master, the Science Corps has completed their preliminary analysis," Kren announced, entering the command chamber with a data tablet. The veteran officer's expression was troubled, which immediately put Theln on alert. "Show me." Kren activated the holographic display. Images of Earth appeared, rotating slowly. The humans call their world a garden planet. By their standards, it's beautiful and welcoming. By our standards, it's a death world. Theln leaned forward, studying the data. "Explain." "Earth's gravity is 0.27 standard units higher than the Korthian homeworld," Kren began. "Their atmospheric oxygen content is nearly toxic to most species we've encountered. The weather patterns are violent and unpredictable. Temperature swings that would kill most life are considered normal seasonal changes." The display shifted to show various Earth creatures. Predators with teeth and claws, microscopic organisms that cause diseases, plants that were poisonous to touch. Evolution on this world favored aggression, adaptation, and survival at all costs. The humans aren't just another intelligent species, War Master. They're apex predators who evolved on a planet that tried to kill them every day. Theln absorbed this information, his mind working through the implications. That explains their physical capabilities, their tolerance for acceleration forces, their reaction speeds, but it doesn't explain their tactical abilities. "Actually, it does," Kren said quietly. "Human history is nothing but warfare. For thousands of years, they fought each other in conflicts that spanned their entire world. They've been refining the art of killing since before they even had written language. War isn't something they learned. It's something they are." Before Theln could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. The tactical officer's voice came over the communication system. "War Master, we have multiple distress signals from our supply convoy in the Theta sector." Theln rushed to the bridge, Kren following close behind. The main view screen showed a tactical map of Korthian-controlled space. Red icons blinked where supply ships had gone silent one after another, forming a pattern that made Theln's blood run cold. "They're attacking our logistics," he breathed. "How did they even find our supply routes?" Commander Alex Turner sat in the captain's chair of the UEDC Shadow, a stealth frigate specifically designed for deep space operations. His ship was smaller than most human warships, built for speed and invisibility rather than direct combat. For the past 2 months, the Shadow had been operating behind enemy lines, mapping Korthian positions and identifying vulnerabilities. "Target locked," his weapons officer reported. "Korthian supply freighter, minimal escort." "Fire when ready," Alex ordered calmly. The Shadow's torpedo tubes launched 4 missiles. They crossed the distance to the Korthian freighter in seconds, overwhelming its shields and tearing through its hull. The ship broke apart, spilling supplies and debris into the void. "Jump out," Alex commanded. "Pattern Delta 7. Don't give them time to track us." The Shadow's faster-than-light drive engaged and the ship vanished before Korthian reinforcements could arrive. It was the 6th supply ship they'd destroyed that week, part of a coordinated campaign across multiple human stealth vessels. Admiral Morrison had been clear in her strategy briefing. "We can't match their numbers in a straight fight, so we don't fight straight. We hit their logistics, disrupt their communications, make them afraid to move without looking over their shoulders. We make them fight our kind of war." Back on Earth, Dr. Lauren Hayes worked in a secure facility buried beneath the Rocky Mountains. The xenobiologist had become one of humanity's most valuable assets, not for her knowledge of Earth life, but for her rapidly growing understanding of Korthian culture and psychology. "They think in hierarchies," she explained to a group of military strategists, gesturing at the holographic display showing Korthian command structures. "Every decision flows up and down a rigid chain of command. It makes them efficient, but it also makes them predictable." General Ryan Foster, overall commander of Earth's ground forces, studied the display with interest. "So if we disrupt their command structure, the rest falls apart?" "Not exactly," Lauren corrected. "They have backup protocols. But if we feed false information into their communication networks, their rigid system will propagate those errors throughout their entire fleet. They trust their technology and their hierarchy too much. It's a weakness we can exploit." Ryan nodded slowly. "You're talking about cyber warfare on a scale we've never attempted." "I'm talking about winning a war we can't afford to lose," Lauren replied firmly. "The Korthians have more ships, more weapons, more experience, but they've never fought an enemy who could hack their systems while simultaneously attacking their supply lines. We need every advantage we can get." The cyber warfare campaign began 3 days later. Human programmers, working from the captured Korthian systems that Alex Turner's missions had provided, inserted carefully crafted malware into enemy networks. The code was subtle, designed to spread slowly and remain undetected. Thelen first noticed something was wrong when his navigation systems began showing discrepancies. Ships reported being in slightly different positions than what the fleet coordination system indicated. The differences were small, just a few thousand kilometers, but in space warfare, precision mattered. "Run a full diagnostic on all systems," he ordered. Every ship in the fleet. The diagnostics came back clean. The systems were functioning perfectly. Yet the discrepancies continued, growing worse each day. Ships missed rendezvous points. Supply convoys arrived at the wrong coordinates. Communication delays became more frequent. "It's the humans," Kren said during an emergency meeting. "They've infected our systems somehow. Our artificial intelligence can't detect the intrusion because it's designed to trust data from other Korthian systems. The humans are using our own network architecture against us." Thelen slammed his fist against the table. "Purge everything. Reset every computer system in the fleet to factory defaults. Cut all network connections between ships until we can verify they're clean." "That will take weeks," Kren protested. "We'll be blind and deaf during that time." "Better blind and deaf than led into a trap by our own systems," Thelen growled. The fleet-wide system purge began, but the damage was already done. Weeks of carefully planned positioning and logistics had been thrown into chaos. Supply shortages became critical. Ship repairs fell behind schedule. Morale plummeted as Korthian warriors realized they were fighting an enemy they couldn't see or predict. Commander Alex Turner's shadow returned to human space after another successful raid. His crew was exhausted, having spent 3 months in hostile territory, but they'd accomplished their mission. The Korthians were in disarray, their mighty fleet hamstrung by supply problems and technical failures. "Mission report to Admiral Morrison," Alex dictated to his communication officer. "Enemy fleet is combat ineffective for the foreseeable future. Recommend pressing our advantage before they can reorganize." But Morrison had other plans. In a secure communication from Earth, she explained her reasoning. "We've proven we can hurt them. Now we need to show them we can destroy them completely. But we also need to show them there's another option. We're preparing a demonstration that will make it clear continuing this war is pointless." Captain Melissa Grant had been transferred from fighter operations to command of a frigate, the UEDC Defiant. Her new ship was part of a special task force being assembled for what Admiral Morrison called Operation Final Warning. The operation was simple in concept but terrifyingly bold in execution. 20 human warships would jump directly into Korthian space, perform a series of maneuvers and weapons demonstrations, then jump out before the enemy could respond. It was meant to show the Korthians exactly how outclassed they were in terms of speed, coordination, and tactical flexibility. "This is insane," Lieutenant Sophie Brennan, now serving as Melissa's executive officer, said quietly as they reviewed the mission parameters. "Probably," Melissa agreed, "but it might also end the war before it costs millions of lives on both sides. The Korthians respect strength. We're going to show them strength they can't match." The task force jumped into Korthian space, appearing in the middle of Thelen's defensive perimeter. Before the Korthian sensors could fully process what was happening, the human ships began their demonstration. They moved through formations that should have been impossible, their coordination so perfect it seemed choreographed. They fired their weapons at carefully calculated angles, showing they could. The Korthian science vessel Seeker of Truth drifted in high orbit above Earth, its sensors recording everything they could detect. Inside its research laboratories, teams of scientists worked around the clock, trying to understand the species that had defeated their empire's military might. The data they collected was disturbing, fascinating, and deeply troubling all at once. Lead researcher Nath stood before a holographic display showing a human skeleton. Her colleagues gathered around, their expressions ranging from curiosity to outright horror. For 3 weeks they'd been studying everything they could about human biology, and each discovery made their situation seem more impossible. "Look at this bone density," Nath said, highlighting the human femur. "It's designed to support their body weight under Earth's crushing gravity. A Korthian walking on Earth's surface would be pressed down with 27% more force than on our homeworld. Humans evolved under that pressure. Their muscles, their cardiovascular systems, everything about them is built stronger just to survive their own planet." She switched to a display showing human and Korthian pilots during high-speed maneuvers. "Watch how the human handles acceleration. That's 7 times their planet's gravity. It should render them unconscious. Instead, they remain alert and combat effective. Their blood vessels constrict automatically. Their heart rate adjusts. Their brain continues receiving oxygen. Corthians would black out at 5 times gravity. One of the younger researchers, a male named Court, raised a question. But physical capability alone doesn't explain their tactical superiority. Many strong species exist in the galaxy, and we've conquered them all. You're correct, Nath agreed, pulling up a new set of data. Which brings us to their neurology. Human brains developed through millions of years of predator-prey dynamics. They have exceptional pattern recognition, allowing them to predict enemy movements and adapt strategies in real time. Their decision-making process is faster than ours, particularly under stress. The display showed brain scans comparing human and Corthian neural activity during combat simulations. The human brain lit up with activity across multiple regions, processing information and making decisions with startling speed. The Corthian brain, in comparison, showed more focused but slower processing. They think faster, Court breathed. In combat, they're literally thinking faster than we can react. There's more, Nath continued grimly. Human psychology evolved in small tribal groups that competed for resources. They developed strong loyalty bonds, willingness to sacrifice themselves for their group, and an almost pathological refusal to surrender when cornered. In psychological terms, humans don't just fight for victory. They fight because surrendering feels worse than death. She pulled up historical records of human conflicts, translated from their various languages. The scientist watched in silence as the display showed thousands of years of warfare. Battles with primitive weapons that killed millions, wars that spanned entire continents. Conflicts so devastating that humans created weapons capable of destroying their own planet. They've been at war with themselves for their entire recorded history, Nath said quietly. They know every tactic we might use because they've used it on each other. Guerrilla warfare, psychological operations, cyber attacks, weapons of mass destruction, all of it invented and perfected by humans fighting humans. Court's voice was barely a whisper. They're not a young spacefaring species learning to fight. They're an ancient warrior species that just recently gained access to space. Exactly, Nath confirmed. And there's one more factor we need to discuss. Human endurance. The display changed to show a human long-distance runner. The image was from Earth's historical records, showing something called a marathon. A human running for hours without stopping, covering over 40 kilometers. Humans evolved as persistence hunters, Nath explained. They would track prey for days, running it to exhaustion. Most species in the galaxy are faster in short bursts, but humans can maintain effort for extended periods that would kill others. In a battle lasting hours, Corthian crews begin to falter after 4 or 5 hours. Human crews show no significant performance decline even after 12 hours of continuous combat. She paused, letting that information sink in, and perhaps most terrifying of all, their pain tolerance and injury response. Humans can continue fighting with wounds that would incapacitate any Corthian. Their bodies flood with chemicals that dull pain and increase aggression when injured. They literally become more dangerous the closer they are to death. The research lab fell silent. Every scientist present understood what this meant. The Corthian Dominion had picked a fight with a species that was biologically, neurologically, and psychologically optimized for warfare in ways that no other known species could match. We need to send this report to the High Command immediately, Court said. They need to understand what we're facing. Back in the human solar system, Colonel Danny Price led a team of Marines on a training exercise aboard a Corthian cruiser that had been captured during the Mars battle. The ship had been towed to a secure facility where human engineers were studying its systems, trying to understand Corthian technology. Remember, these ships are designed for their physiology, not ours, Danny told his team as they practiced boarding maneuvers. The gravity is lighter, which means you'll move faster but have less stability. The corridors are wider because Corthians are larger. Use that space, don't let them box you in. Sergeant Mike Torres, one of Danny's most experienced Marines, raised a concern. Colonel, if we board one of their ships during actual combat, we'll be outnumbered and outgunned. How do we handle that? Danny smiled grimly. The same way humans have always handled superior numbers. We hit hard, we hit fast, and we never give them time to organize. Corthians fight in coordinated units with clear chains of command. We break that coordination, target their commanders, create chaos, make them react to us instead of executing their plans. The training exercise began. Marines moved through the captured ship, using simulated weapons to practice clearing rooms and securing key areas. They moved with controlled aggression, their training and instincts honed by centuries of human military doctrine. Faster, Danny shouted. A Korthian warrior is bigger and stronger than you in one-on-one combat. Don't give them that chance. Move as a team, cover your angles, never stop moving. The Marines pushed themselves harder, understanding that their lives might depend on these skills. They were training to fight an enemy who had conquered multiple star systems, and the only advantage they had was surprise, speed, and absolute determination. In another part of the solar system, Dr. Lauren Hayes studied the Korthian psychological profile she'd been building. The xenobiologist had become an expert on their enemy, understanding not just their capabilities but their mindset. They're not evil, she explained to Admiral Morrison during a briefing. They're just operating on a different set of assumptions. For hundreds of years, they've encountered species that either surrendered quickly or were easily defeated. They built their entire culture around the belief that might makes right, because that belief has always been validated. Kate Morrison listened carefully, her tactical mind already considering the implications. So they've never had to consider negotiation as equals. It's always been conqueror and conquered. Exactly, Lauren confirmed. Which means when we propose peace talks, we need to do it from a position of demonstrated strength. They won't respect diplomacy from weakness. They need to understand that fighting us is futile, but also that we're not interested in conquering them. That's going to be a foreign concept. Can they adapt to that? Kate asked. Can their culture handle the idea of coexistence rather than domination? Lauren considered the question carefully. I think so. Korthians are rigid in their thinking, but they're not stupid. They can recognize reality when it's demonstrated clearly enough. War Master Thelon, in particular, seems more flexible than others. He's already shown willingness to retreat and reassess when faced with unexpected resistance. Then Thelon is the one we need to convince, Kate decided. If we can make him understand that humanity offers a better path forward than continued war, he might be able to convince his superiors. Meanwhile, on the Seeker of Truth, Nath completed her comprehensive report on human capabilities. She read through it one final time before transmitting it to the Korthian High Command, knowing that the contents would shake the foundations of Dominion policy. The report concluded with a stark assessment. Humans represent a fundamental challenge to Korthian military doctrine. They cannot be defeated through conventional warfare without casualties that would cripple the Dominion. They cannot be conquered because their psychology makes them refuse surrender. They cannot be intimidated because their deathworld evolution eliminated fear as a survival strategy. Recommendation: immediate cessation of hostilities and establishment of diplomatic relations. Alternative recommendation: complete extermination of human species through planetary bombardment. No middle ground exists. Humans will either become our greatest allies or our most dangerous enemies. We cannot afford to have them as enemies. War Master Theln read Nath's report 3 times, each reading making. The space station hung between worlds, a neutral meeting ground constructed specifically for this unprecedented moment. Neither Korthian nor human, the station had been built by automated systems over the course of 2 weeks, using materials provided by both sides. It was small, functional, and most importantly neutral territory, where warriors from both civilizations could meet without either side claiming home advantage. Admiral Kate Morrison stood in front of a mirror in her quarters, adjusting her uniform for the 5th time. She'd commanded fleets in battle, made decisions that affected millions of lives, and faced death more times than she could count. Yet somehow, this moment made her more nervous than any combat situation ever had. "You look fine," Lieutenant Sophie Brennan said from the doorway. The younger officer had been assigned as Kate's aide for the peace talks, a role that required diplomatic skill and tactical awareness in equal measure. "The Korthians aren't judging you on your appearance. They're judging you on your strength. That's what worries me," Kate admitted. "This entire negotiation depends on us being strong enough that they respect us, but reasonable enough that they want to work with us. It's a narrow line to walk." "You've already walked that line," Sophie reminded her. "You beat them in battle, then offered them a way out that saves their pride. That's exactly what Theln needs to convince his superiors that peace is the right choice." Kate nodded, taking a deep breath. "Time to find out if we can turn enemies into allies." On the Korthian side of the station, War Master Thelen prepared for the meeting with similar trepidation. He wore his ceremonial armor, decorated with honors from 100 victories. But those victories felt hollow now, meaningless against an enemy who had rewritten every rule of warfare he'd ever known. The High Command is watching, Kren reminded him. If these negotiations fail, they'll send another fleet, a bigger one, and they'll order planetary bombardment rather than accept another defeat. I know, Thelen replied grimly, which is why I cannot fail. The humans have shown us mercy by not destroying our fleet when they had the chance. If we force them into a corner, they'll show us something else entirely. Something I don't want to see. The two delegations met in the station's central conference room. The space was deliberately designed to put neither side at an advantage, with seating that accommodated both human and Korthian physiology, lighting that suited both species' visual spectrums, and atmosphere carefully balanced for mutual comfort. Kate entered first, flanked by Sophie and General Ryan Foster, who represented Earth's ground forces. Behind them came Dr. Lauren Hayes, whose expertise on Korthian culture would be invaluable during negotiations. Thelen entered from the opposite side, accompanied by Kren and lead researcher Nath. The two groups studied each other across the conference table, taking measure of their former enemies in person for the first time. Kate spoke first, her voice calm and clear. War Master Thelen, thank you for agreeing to this meeting. I know it required courage to suggest peace talks to your superiors. Admiral Morrison, Thelen responded, his translated words coming through the communication device each side wore. It required not courage, but acknowledgement of reality. Your species has proven itself in battle. Continued conflict serves neither of our peoples. Agreed, Kate said, sitting down. The others followed suit. Which is why I want to propose something unprecedented. Not a treaty of surrender, not an agreement of vassalage, but a partnership between equals. The word equals hung in the air. Kren's expression showed shock. In Korthian culture, there were conquerors and conquered. Nothing between. Thelen, however, leaned forward with interest. Explain what you mean by partnership. Kate activated a holographic display showing both Korthian and human space. Your empire has resources, knowledge, and experience with dozens of species across multiple star systems. Humanity has technologies you lack, particularly in stealth systems, cyber warfare, and adaptive tactics. Together, we could accomplish far more than either of us could alone. You're suggesting a military alliance, Ryan added. But more than that. We're proposing cultural exchange, shared research, mutual defense. Your people have been exploring the galaxy for centuries. We're new to this. We have much to learn from you. And in return? Thelen asked carefully. In return, we teach you what we know, Kate said simply. We share our technologies, our methods, our perspectives, and we ensure that the next time you encounter a hostile species, you have access to tactics and strategies they won't expect. Nath spoke up, her scientific curiosity overriding diplomatic protocol. You would share your military secrets with a species that tried to conquer you? Lauren Hayes smiled slightly. We're not sharing secrets. We're creating allies. There's a difference. Earth has a long history of former enemies becoming strong friends. We've fought terrible wars among ourselves, then built lasting peace by choosing cooperation over continued conflict. Humans are unique in that regard, Nath observed. Most species in the galaxy don't have such flexible social structures, which is precisely why this alliance would benefit both sides, Kate pressed. Korthian discipline and coordination combined with human adaptability and innovation. It's a combination that would make both our civilizations stronger. Thelen sat back, considering. The proposal was radical, unprecedented in Korthian history, but he couldn't deny the logic. Continuing the war would cost thousands of ships and millions of lives, and even if they won through sheer attrition, they'd be left with a weakened empire unable to defend against other threats. What guarantees do we have that humans won't use shared technologies against us? Kren asked, voicing the concern that every Korthian was thinking. Ryan Foster answered that question. The same guarantee you give us. Mutual self-interest. We're stronger together than apart. Break the alliance, and both sides lose access to technologies and tactics that give us advantages over other potential enemies. It's a deterrent built on cooperation, rather than fear. And there's this, Sophie added, pulling up historical records from Earth. These are examples of military alliances that lasted centuries on our world. We know how to make these partnerships work because we've done it before. Not perfectly, not without problems, but successfully enough that former enemies became trusted friends. The negotiations continued for 6 hours. Details were discussed, concerns addressed, terms proposed and counter-proposed. Slowly, a framework emerged. The Korthian Dominion and United Earth Defense Command would establish formal diplomatic relations. Military technologies would be exchanged through carefully controlled channels. Joint training exercises would be conducted to help both sides understand each other's methods. Cultural exchange programs would begin, allowing Korthians and humans to learn from each other beyond military matters. Most importantly, neither side would be subservient to the other. It would be a true alliance of equals, something unprecedented in Korthian experience. "There's one more thing," Kate said as the formal negotiations neared completion. "We need a demonstration, something that shows both our peoples that this alliance is real and beneficial." "What do you propose?" Thelen asked. "Joint military exercises," Ryan suggested. "Korthian and human ships training together, learning from each other. Show our people and yours that cooperation makes us stronger." Thelen considered this. "And if the High Command refuses to ratify this treaty? Then we'll have to hope they're wise enough to see what I see," Kate said seriously. "That humanity would rather have the Korthian Dominion as friends than enemies. But make no mistake, we will defend ourselves if necessary. We've proven that. What we're offering now is a better path forward for everyone." 3 days later, the first joint training exercise took place. Captain Melissa Grant commanded the UEDC Defiant, flying in formation with 3 Korthian cruisers. It felt surreal, watching former enemies coordinate their movements, sharing tactical data, working together. "This is weird," Sophie, now serving as Melissa's executive officer, commented from the tactical station. "A month ago we were trying to kill these guys. Now we're teaching them our maneuvers. And they're teaching us theirs," Melissa reminded her. "Watch how they coordinate their shield harmonics. We don't have anything like that. If we can integrate their shield technology with our stealth systems, we'll have ships that are nearly invisible and heavily defended." The training exercise demonstrated something important to observers on both sides. Korthian discipline and formation tactics combined with human speed and adaptability created a force multiplier that exceeded what either side could achieve alone. Ships that had been enemies became partners, learning to trust each other through shared experience. Commander Alex Turner, back from his stealth operations, watched the exercises with Dr. Lauren Hayes from the observation deck of a human command ship. "Do you really think this will work?" he asked. "Can we trust them?" "Trust is built through action, not words," Lauren replied. "Every joint operation, every successful cooperation, every moment where we choose to work together instead of fight, that builds trust. It won't be perfect. There will be misunderstandings, cultural clashes, incidents. But if both sides commit to making it work, yes, I think it will." On the Korthian flagship, Thelen reviewed reports from the joint exercises.